My name is Asia Alsgaard, and I'll be speaking to you today on the role of coastal fauna in the transition to agriculture in the Soconusco, Mexico. The transition to agriculture was a transformative moment in human history that changed our relationship with food. Rather than solely relying on hunting wild animals or gathering wild plants, people began to invest into domesticating these resources to make them more manageable and abundant. Our lives today are fundamentally shaped by the transition to agriculture, and understanding how it occurred is a long-standing question in archaeological research. For my dissertation, I'm looking at one aspect of this question. Why, worldwide, are there examples of coastal foragers who delay the transition to agriculture? Even when inland foragers adopt agriculture, there are examples of coastal foragers who continue to exploit maritime resources such as shellfish and fish. One proposed explanation argues that there was no incentive for coastal foragers to transition to agriculture because the abundance, diversity, and stability of coastal resources allowed foragers to meet their caloric and nutritional needs. Essentially, why invest in a new resource when what you have is already working? I'm focusing on the question of stability, asking specifically, are coastal resources stable leading up to the transition to agriculture? And do foragers choose to manage coastal resources to maintain that stability? I will investigate these questions using faunal data, specifically fish remains from 6 shell mounds in the Soconusco, Mexico. These mounds are situated around a modern-day estuarine lagoon system characterized by a mature mangrove forest. When these mounds were occupied around 8,000 years ago, between 7,500 and 3,800 years BP, the environment would have been extremely similar to modern-day conditions. These shell mounds represent the foraging practices of the coastal fisher-hunter-gatherers known as the Chantuto Society. These mounds contain the remains of mollusk shells, fish, turtles, birds, and terrestrial mammals such as deer. So here's an example of one of the shell mounds prior to excavation. And here's an example of one of the shell mounds during excavations directed by Dr. Barbara Voorhees. You can see the darker earth layer at the top, and then the lighter gray shell mound layers consisting of hard-packed shell. Using fauna from these shell mounds, specifically fish, I'm asking how fish stability changed leading up to the transition to agriculture, and whether there's any evidence for human management of these fishes. Changes in abundance or diversity can reflect changes in hunting practices. Lower abundance and diversity can reflect more intensive hunting practices, and higher abundance and diversity over time can reflect an increase in coastal resource stability. So if the Chantuto are actively managing fish populations and increasing the abundance and diversity, we should be able to see evidence of those practices in the trophic structure of the fishes, as well as in the season of catch. So what do we know about Chantuto fishing practices at the moment? At this point, it seems the relative abundance of different fishes varies both between time and between different mounds. The most frequent fish species are depicted here for 4 of the shell mounds: Cerro de las Conchas in the Middle Archaic, and Campon, Talactuachero, and Zapotillo for the Late Archaic. You can see a shift from the Middle Archaic to the Late Archaic, from high frequencies of snappers, grunts, and catfish to the Pacific fat sleeper and gar. Sometimes, hunting small fish species can indicate increased hunting pressures. However, alternative lines of data suggest that fish body size stays the same over this period of time. Essentially, there's no current indication that the change from fishing large to small fish species is due to human hunting pressures. Rather, non-human environmental change or increases in hunting stability seem more likely. This graph is showing the sample size of fish for each mound plotted against the number of genera represented at each site, with the Middle Archaic site Cerro de las Conchas and the Late Archaic sites Talactuachero and Zapotillo. There are also 2 agricultural sites from the formative period immediately following the Archaic from the same region. We expect to see a linear relationship. As sample size increases, so too should the number of genera at each mound. In terms of the number of genera of each fish, there is relatively no difference between the Middle and Late Archaic mounds. However, there are 2 points of interest. So first is that relative to the formative or agricultural period sites, the coastal foragers from the Archaic have a relatively higher diversity. Secondly, in the modern day estuarine lagoon system, there are over 200 species of fish. Essentially, this is telling us that the Chantuto people were eating a very small subset of the number of possible resources that they might have exploited. So in sum, we're seeing a shift in the kinds of species being exploited over time. However, overall diversity remains relatively the same. The shifts in abundance and increases in body size may be due to foraging practices designed to increase coastal resource stability. If that's the case, we should expect to see stability in the fish population itself. There are multiple ways individuals can manage fish populations, such as through territorial management systems, dietary taboos, the management of aquatic vegetation, harvesting prey that is resilient to human predation, as well as the different seasons of harvest. I'll investigate the possibilities that people were harvesting resilient prey species and limiting the season of harvest. First, I will look at changes in the trophic structure of the fish population using carbon and nitrogen stable isotopes, essentially asking, are people harvesting fish sustainably in a way that maintains all of the trophic connections within the habitat, or are they preferentially taking higher trophic or lower trophic level fishes and potentially disrupting the stability of the coastal ecosystem? Secondly, I will look at the season when fish were being harvested, using oxygen and carbon stable isotopes of otoliths, an aragonite accretion found in fish. I'm asking here, are people fishing fish when they're more abundant during the dry season, allowing a period of rest for the fish population to recover, or are they harvesting them during multiple seasons, during both the dry and wet seasons? Ultimately, I aim to compare these data to modern day fishes and investigate if present day fishermen at the nearby town of Las Palmas practice fish management, such as specifying what season fish can be harvested during. Globally, estuarine lagoon systems are extremely productive habitats for both flora and fauna. They're vital for various fish species in terms of being used as spawning and nursing grounds. Understanding how past populations sustainably used wetlands is important for the present-day perpetuity of these wetland environments within the context of changing environmental conditions and increased human fishing pressures today. Thank you to all of those listed on this slide, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me using my email at the bottom left-hand corner of the slide. Thank you.